everyone. My name is Atreyu. I'm going to be reading my story. It's called The Alien Strike. Once there was a teenage boy named Mason who was sitting in his bedroom, and he was just sitting in his bed, and then his parents called him down for supper. And he ate his food. Then shortly after supper, he sat in his living room watching some TV shows. Then out of nowhere, the TV shows gets interrupted by breaking news saying that there was a UFO sighting a couple blocks away from their house. And at that moment, everyone went silent and looked shocked. They all started to prepare for what could happen. So they got flashlights and food, and they all hid in the basement. And Mason brought his laptop to do some research about the aliens, and he did not believe what he saw. It read, "Scientists found what appears to be an alien weapon," so they instantly called in the best scientist in the world and paid him millions of dollars to look at this alien weapon. And when the scientists touched it, the weapon blew up and he died. So Mason was scared now, and he went to his web browser and it said no internet. And he looked up and all the lights were off. They lost power. So they went and hid in a closet in the basement, and all of a sudden, there was a moment of silence. Then they heard a weird sound, something they've never heard before, and Mason just remembered he forgot to lock the back door. And then they heard weird goo sounds coming down the basement stairs. Then the closet door was disintegrated, and there stood a 9-foot-tall green figure with purple clothes. Then the alien sucked all of them into him, and none of them could see what was happening. Then they blacked out for about 20 minutes. Later, they woke up in a place with a bunch of beds, and they were strapped down with metal straps. And they looked around and saw other people strapped down. And they looked to the right and saw aliens walking towards them. And they got stabbed with a needle and woke up in a desert and couldn't remember anything. Mason's family wondered what happened. How did they get there? Were they far from home? I guess we'll never know.
So, this one is called Gone, and I'll start off now. And I got it on a thing so I can kind of turn it and keep my eyes looking, so kind of bear with me with that. Okay. I walked up the stairs on the back deck with tearful memories streaming down my face. I've been here time and time again, and I'm always brought back for some reason or another. This is the house that built me, the house that made me, and the house that broke me. Or sadly, this is the house that broke me. This home was my refuge when I had nowhere else to go, my safe place for so many years and for so many nights that I was so lost. I lived there as a young girl and again later on as I faced my teen years into early adulthood. I remembered tons of memories of time spent with family and holidays celebrated, but so many painful memories of having to say goodbye to people I never thought I would have to. From the first time we pulled into the driveway, I felt something at that house, something unexplainable, something that I had never felt in any other home I had ever lived in before. Pictures of lives past and families who I had never met or even known flooded my brain in a manner I had never experienced before. I thought I was losing my mind. The first night we were there, we ended up going through an entire sleeve of light bulbs because they just kept shattering for no reason. It made me feel as though maybe it was a warning. Maybe we weren't intended to be there after all. I had such a connection to that home for reasons unbeknownst to me. I spent many nights with this horrible gut feeling of knowing something awful was about to happen, or I knew I was about to lose somebody very important to me. I knew I was about to lose somebody very important to me, and it would always happen whenever that feeling crept up. Death was around the corner. upon that feeling, and I always knew it was unavoidable. This house represented all these horrible memories that changed my life forever, that changed me forever. The home that once represented a fresh new start so long ago now had a cloud of gloom hanging over it, one that fills your gut with absolute dread and a sense of impending doom that you just cannot shake. I couldn't stand it any longer, and after my senior year, I sold everything to my name that had any value and packed the remaining things I could take into the back of a moving truck, and I left the state hoping to start fresh. Pulling out of the driveway, I just couldn't help but keep staring back at the house that changed my life forever. Life just didn't go as planned when I left, and yet I found myself being called back to this house. There I stood with those tear-stained cheeks and no idea how I ended up back here. Yet I knew I couldn't do this once again. I knew I had to walk away and leave this house once and for all. As I drove away, I knew that would finally be my last time down that old gravel and dirt driveway about half a mile off the road. I have to pass that house anytime I want to go to town. Sometimes it feels like it's still calling me, haunting me. Anytime, haunting me with my past, just begging me to turn and ride down that driveway one more time. For my own sanity, I know I have to fight that feeling, and I know I must always stay away. I have to stay gone. The end.
My story tonight is called The Babysitter. The 16-year-old Jenny Jeffers, she was having the best summer ever. She was hanging out with her friends. She had went to the mall one day with her friends. They were shopping, having a great time. They sit down to have lunch, and the most popular was having. They were all super excited to be invited, especially Jenny, because he had asked her to be her date for the party. So the girls immediately went out, scattered, went to all the shops she could afford. So she didn't end up getting anything. One of her friends suggested that she get a job babysitting so she could work a little bit and get some money to get her dress. And she gave her a flyer that she found earlier that day for someone who was looking for a babysitter. So when Jenny got home that night, she called the number. This really nice lady picked up the phone. They had a really nice conversation. The lady's name was Mrs. Hagen. She told Jenny that she had a 5-year-old son and she was just looking for a babysitter once a week while her and her husband went out on date night. After their conversation, Mrs. Hagen told Jenny, she said, usually I don't hire people until I meet them in person, but I just have a really great feeling about you. So I want to offer you the job. Jenny was so excited. She accepted it. The night finally come where she went to babysit. Her mom had to work at the diner. Her mom was a single mother, so she couldn't take Jenny. So Jenny took the bus. The bus dropped her off in front of the Hagen's residence because the driveway was a long, crooked driveway up a hill. So Jenny walked up the drive by herself in the night. She gets to the top of the hill to where the house is, and she's kind of reluctant about going in because the house is kind of old looking, scary, no lights or anything. But Jenny goes in anyway, knocks on the door. She's standing there and she hears all this yelling, commotion inside. Sounds like things are being thrown around. And then all of a sudden the door just flies open and there's Mrs. Hagen smiling like nothing had happened inside. And she gave Jenny a hug, brought her in. Donnie, the little boy, come running up to Jenny. Immediately they hit it off. Mr. Hagen come in and he just kind of stares at Jenny. She introduces herself. He doesn't say anything back. He's just kind of weird, pretty much. So Mrs. Hagen and little Donnie show Jenny around the house. Mrs. Hagen gives Jenny money for pizza, and the Hagens go off on their date night. So Jenny and Donnie are there having a great time. They're playing games. They order pizza. Then Donnie wants to play hide and seek. So Jenny's like, okay, we'll play hide and seek. So Donnie goes and hides, and Jenny starts to count. When she gets to 8, the telephone rings. So she goes to answer it, and it's a man's voice on the other end, and he is kind of talking kind of weird, kind of twisted, saying all kinds of perverted stuff to her, and she just hangs up the phone. Pizza's here. So she goes to the door, she opens the door, and she's totally surprised to see Chuck, the guy that asked her out earlier, standing there with the pizza. So they are just both kind of shocked to see each other. And so they're on the porch talking, hanging out, and he's like, so do you live here? And before she could even finish, she runs in the house, calling for Donnie, because she forgot they were playing hide and seek. So she's looking everywhere, she can't find him, and Chuck's helping her look, and they can't find him. And like 30 or 40 minutes pass by, and she's about ready to call his parents, but they pull in. So she goes outside and tells them, she said, we're playing hide and seek. I lost track of time. I don't know where he's at. So the father, he's just pissed off. He starts cussing, runs in the house. The mother, she smiles, and she's like, oh, he does this all the time. So she goes in, and she's like, yells a little code out, and he comes crawling out of the dryer. And she's like, we have this code when we're playing hide and seek, and he does this all the time if I can't find him because he hides so good. So Jenny's first night babysitting was kind of a wreck. Mr. Hagen took her home that night, and on the way back to her house, she tried to initiate conversation. He wouldn't never really say anything. She tried to apologize for scaring them, but he still wouldn't say anything. So he pulls up to her house. She gets out of the car. She says once again that she's sorry, but before she can even say anything, he spins off, squealing tires. So a week passes by, and she goes back to babysit again. This time, watching movies. They start watching a movie, and Donnie falls asleep. So Jenny's sitting there by herself while he's sleeping, and she turns it to a horror movie. And she's sitting there watching this movie, and then all of a sudden, the telephone rings, and she goes to answer it, and it's that same caller that had called the week before, telling kind of obscene stuff, talking real dirty to her, and she just hangs up. Phone starts ringing once again, but this don't really scare her. What scares her is she looks down the hall and sees that the back door is open. And immediately she thinks Donnie's got up and wandered out. So she runs into the living room, but he's still laying there. And she rushes back to the hallway, and she's totally terrified when she sees that the back door is closed, and now the front door is wide open. So she grabs a butcher knife out of the kitchen and goes out on the porch and starts yelling who's out there, trying to, figure out what's going on. And right as she gets ready to yell out again, somebody grabs her from behind, and they start wrestling to the ground. She drops her knife, and her attacker rolls her over on her back and starts laughing. It's Chuck, and he is like, I just had to see you again, and I just wanted to pick with you, and all this stuff. And then he leans down and he kisses her. And so they're kind of laying on the porch, just kind of making out. And headlights. The Hagens are home. They catch her on the porch. Neither one of them are happy at this point, because she's on the porch kissing, making out with a guy. Their son's in there laying down with a horror movie on TV. So Mr. Hagen, he's just had it. He fires Jenny, cusses her out, and Chuck takes her home that night. So a week passes by. Jenny's just kind of going along with her life. She's been fired from babysitting. She didn't get enough money to get her dress, but she's going to figure out a way to get it. And one night she's laying in her bed, and she gets a call, and she answers it, and it's Mr. Hagen. And he's very nice this time. He's never been nice to her, and he's said that he apologizes for the way he treated her. He hopes that she'll come back. All this really nice stuff. So Hey. So she does go back. There's fireworks this morning. It's 4th of July. Lightning. They go out on their date night. This night's just really different. Donnie's not his normal self. He don't really want to watch nothing. She puts him to bed early. And as she's closing his bedroom door, the phone starts to ring. Well, she's all the way upstairs on the 2nd floor. So she walks into the Hagen's bedroom, and my light's probably going to die in a minute. Sees a newspaper clipping sticking out of a box. So she kind of opens the box lid, and she sees that there's all these articles in this box about a babysitter murderer who is actually from the town that the Hagens were from. And as she's starting to look at the newspaper, Mr. Hagen walks in and catches her, and he asks her what she's doing, and she just kind of brushes it off. So he decides and that they had a babysitter who wasn't watching them properly, and that the little sister had actually drowned in the bathtub. So he went to a full rage and murdered the babysitter, and they had to move away from the town before anybody figured out it was him. So Jenny's in full terror at this point, and she's trying to get out of the car, and he won't let her. They pull up to a rock quarry. He pulls her out of the car, tries to throw her over the edge, and Chuck runs out of nowhere because he had followed them, and him and Mr. Hagen, they had this big fight, and he throws Mr. Hagen over the ledge. So a week later, Jenny and Chuck go to that 4th of July party, and Jenny is in that new dress.
Where am I? Oh, let me out of here! What is this place? Play me.
Hello, Eric. Your attempt at escaping your bondage was brave. So instead of locking you up, I'd thought we'd try locking you under. You are currently locked inside a casket. This could either be a moment of redemption or your final resting place. That decision is all up to you. Are you ready to play the game?
Get me out of here, you asshole! Fuck
I
you!
can probably tell by now you have some ill words or feelings towards me. Never fear. We hope you're able to see the light, especially before, well, there is a note you will find in your pocket that contains a clue to your survival, if you are willing to accept it and unlock the casket using the reverse keyhole on the inside. Good luck.
Maggie, Tristan, what have I done? How did I have done this?
I thought a brief moment would allow you to reflect. Turn the photo over, Eric. To escape, you will need a key.
What lies in the stomach may be the
You've lived
key.
your life hungering for self-worth in the beds of loose women. To fight that hunger and unlock the casket, you'll have to find the X that marks the spot. There's a pocket knife near you. Don't worry, it's dull enough, but good enough to extract it from you.
I'll never do it. What are you thinking? I'm gonna cut myself?
You'll never see your kids again.